Good morning, everybody, and welcome along to our webinar session this morning. Mr. Tim Lawless, Head of Research for CoreLogic. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. See, Tim's working from home up there in Noosa, and I'm joining you from up in Woodend, up in Macedon Ranges. We're calling this the remote digital real estate agent during COVID-19, and how to operate in these current situations. So, Tim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Paul.
How's things going up there? How's working from home treating you at the moment, mate?
Well, to be honest, I'm an old hack at this. When I'm not travelling, which was often, I would generally be working from home. So I've got a pretty decent home office setup, fast internet speed. I found it very productive. But I know for a lot of people in our business, because we're all working from home at CoreLogic, is a lot of people are still finding it quite tough to get used to, particularly just the lack of any social contact. I think is quite hard for a lot of people. But we've certainly moved to this digital enablement very quickly, and I can see that across the company, but also across all our suppliers, across our clients. And you can see it in the industry as well. Everybody's very quickly adopted these digital enablement strategies, which is making things quite streamlined, I'd have to say.
Definitely. It's I noticed our peaks and troughs, and it's really peaked in the past 2 weeks of app downloads and things like that, and everybody moving to online auctions and going to the online auction platforms. And it's one thing I will say about the industry: when they do pivot, they pivot really quickly and really well. And a few changes within the industry, obviously the digital side of it. I think it's made a few old school real estate agents who I've loved and dealt with for years, as yourself, who have had to pivot and deal with it, and they've taken it on board. And hopefully we see the light at the end of the tunnel shortly.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt some agents will be slow to respond, but I think the vast majority of agencies have already had the ability to transact in a virtual sense. And in some ways, the silver lining around this crisis is that it is pushing more people into to embrace and adopt new technologies. And I think that will be one of the lasting factors of this COVID era or period, is that we are seeing more people moving to utilize online technologies, and remote inspections, remote auctions, and so forth will probably be a staple going forward.
Well, interesting enough, you and I were chatting about this at a Christmas party last year in December. We said, we've just got through how great it is. Everything's bounced back since the Royal Commission, and saw a smile on the face of all our broker friends and real estate agents, and everyone was jolly and happy. And you'd said to me then, we've got to keep a close eye on this thing happening in China at the moment. And then, mate, here we are, 3 months later.
And how quickly it's evolved. That's right. And this is some of the hardship the industry has been facing for some time now. We've moved through a housing market downturn between the middle of 2017 and the middle of 2019. We saw housing values generally fall by about 10%, although most of that was driven by Sydney, down 15%, and Melbourne a little bit more than 10%. Whereas most of the smaller cities saw much smaller declines. Of course, Perth and Darwin in a very long-running downturn where values fell much more. But of course, the last 6 or 8 months has been characterised by pretty strong market conditions. And I think as we enter this period of disruption, we are leaving behind a very solid foundation in the housing market. It was very, very evident in the fact that we're seeing values rising quite swiftly. We're seeing transactional activity really picking up, supported by very low interest rates and decent levels of confidence. But, in many ways, those recent trends become much less relevant now as we move into the period where uncertainty is just unprecedented. We're about to see the economy of Australia slip into a recession. I guess the good news here is this is all temporary. The faster we can contain this virus and get back to a normal operational cadence from an economic perspective, hopefully that will help to minimise any sort of downside risk in the market.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, the past weekend, since Prime Minister first banned open for inspections and auctions, what has data told us, Tim? What have you guys seen?
Yeah, well, this was always going to be a big test for the markets. Last weekend was scheduled to be the biggest auction market so far this year. More than 3,000 properties taken to auction over the weekend. And of course, leading up to the weekend, we did see the announcement of a change of policy, which essentially banned on-site auctions. And a lot of agencies had to scramble to I guess, accommodate that move to online formats that potentially they hadn't really had the time to either market properly or to move to that technology from an in-house perspective. So we did see auction results hit pretty severely over the weekends. About 40% of auctions were withdrawn. Just to provide some context there, normally we'd see around about 5% of auctions withdrawn over a weekend. But the prior weekend was about 7% withdrawal rate. So that jumped up to 40% of auctions actually were just taken off the market, either rescheduled or vendors got cold feet and decided to wait this out. The clearance rates fell pretty sharply. So if we include those withdrawn auctions and those properties that didn't sell under the hammer, clearance rates fell below 50% for the first time since June of last year. A little bit lower than that in Sydney, a little bit higher in Melbourne, which are the two main auction markets. So we'll see how it goes this weekend. Scheduled auctions this weekend coming are still above 2,000. So chances are we'll continue to see a high rate of withdrawal. And hopefully, given a week's benefit, we'll see more agents and agencies utilising those online technologies and also being able to market them appropriately and also set up their plan Bs. I think this was one of the factors that some agents experienced was a bit of downtime, some complexities around internet connectivity and that type of thing. So hopefully a lot of those bugs have been ironed out for this weekend.
Oh, definitely. Look, as a business, we've been able to pivot and disperse our staff across working from home. I'm like yourself. As I did when I was at CoreLogic, used to work from home a lot, and when I wasn't there, I was on a plane. And I found internet speeds are slower at home at the moment. The telephone lines are down on particular parts of the day, and it's very, very interesting to see. The poor old Telstra tech up in our area is pulling his hair out, unfortunately, trying to get things going to work from home. But he's done a good job. I think keeping essential services running is a key to this. Look, with talking about employment, employment is obviously unemployment is increasing and will probably continue to do so. Interested to know what your views are about the different effects this may have on the property market, rentals and sales.
Yeah, it's. Clearly there's some downside risk here. Normally, when you see fewer people in a job, there's typically some downwards pressure on property activity and housing prices. A little bit different this time around. This time around, considering, well, first of all, I agree. We are expecting to see unemployment surging higher. Forecasts from reputable economists we should expect unemployment to get up around 11% by June. Currently, it's only just a little bit above 5%, so more than doubling in the space of a couple of months, which is understandable given we've seen so much fallout in hospitality, in tourism, in travel, and so forth, education as well. So no doubt those forecasts are probably accurate and reasonable. What we've seen more recently, though, is a lot of stimulus coming into the marketplace. This week, we saw the federal government announcing their job seeker stimulus. 130 billion of stimulus there, representing around about 6% of Australian GDP. So you've got to expect that's going to help to insulate the unemployment rate a little bit. That small and medium-sized businesses are incentivized to be keeping their staff on. But no doubt there will be some businesses that simply just can't survive through this downturn. Staff costs are only one component of their cash flows. So there will be some fallout. We should expect unemployment to rise. And the downside risk for the housing market, of course, is as fewer people have a job, it typically means that there's going to be some hardship for those people that are paying their debt to their lenders. Potentially they could move into a distressed situation. Thankfully, we have seen most lenders come out with some leniency policies. Over the next 6 months, if borrowers have been affected by either being stood down or being affected by reduced hours or become unemployed, they should be eligible for taking on some of those leniency options from their lenders. So no doubt many are in the midst of that at the moment. You've also got the fact that higher unemployment will probably have some downwards pressure in rental markets as well. And this is going to be a real conundrum for the marketplace. We've already seen a lot of debates around, well, what should landlords do if their tenants aren't able to pay the rent anymore? And we've seen the federal government encouraging landlords and tenants to start talking about this, to start mediating. In many ways, it's probably in a landlord's best interest to provide a rental discount to their tenants rather than lose them completely or see their tenants not being able to continue on with their tenancy. Also, of course, that will be helped along by the fact that we are seeing unemployed or underemployed being supported through this new government initiative. $1,500 a fortnight for people who are affected should help to alleviate some of that rental distress that we're expecting to see in the market.
Definitely. It's some scary times out there at the moment, and people are really worried. What's your thoughts that, obviously, the Prime Minister's not directly saying, hey, you need to do this to the banks, but I think the pressure will be really put on too when we get through this to say, all right, guys, if somebody has had a pause in their employment, you need to take that into account when you're doing your checks for them or your credit checks and your pre-approvals and things like that, because obviously it's something that the person can't help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think lenders have the best interests of their borrowers at heart, but also their commercial interests as well. I think for any lender, they'll do as much as they possibly can to prevent a borrower from going into an arrears situation or into a mortgagee in possession situation. Yeah. Clearly, the banks are getting a big step up or a big leg up from the government or from the Reserve Bank in particular, with a $90 billion funding facility that's mostly designed to help small and medium-sized businesses. But also, one of the factors that should help to insulate property values from a material downturn is the fact that this leniency option is in place. It should help to protect the market from a flood of distressed properties coming into a selling position at a time when buyer demand is likely to remain quite low. So I think through previous economic shocks, one of the downside elements to falling housing values has been a significant rise in distressed properties. And of course, that would place some downwards pressure on prices. So if we do see the housing market navigating the next 6 months with a fairly minimal number of properties entering distress or having to go through a forced sale situation, that should help to protect housing values, at least as long as this downturn or this disruption period is within that 6-month period.
Yeah, very good. So the big question, I know all the brokers and agents and everybody on here is dying to know, and the main question: what types of data trends would be indicators for the market turning around? And I know they asked you this one in the Royal Commission. They've asked this one in the GFC. Now COVID-19, or the 2020 vision, I keep calling it. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think that the key factors we'll be looking for are any of the high frequency indicators. A lot of the economic data that flows through that we monitor tends to be backwards looking. It's not real time. So looking for factors like stabilization in unemployment or an improvement in jobs growth or any sort of sign that economic growth is starting to improve are all going to be probably not quite timely enough to pick a turning point in the market. So we are now looking for very high frequency indicators in the market. From CoreLogic's perspective, we're looking at factors, well, firstly, consumer sentiment is probably the most important one. At the moment, we're seeing consumer sentiment absolutely plummeting, as you'd expect. Households are becoming much less confident in the nation's economy, in their household finances, in their ability to hold a job. So when you see confidence falling as quickly as what it is at the moment, it makes making a high commitment decision, like buying a property or selling a property, much harder to actually make that decision. So I'd be looking for a change in sentiment There are weekly indicators of consumer sentiment put out by Roy Morgan and ANZ. There's the monthly indicator that comes out from Westpac as well, which I think are both very worthy of tracking quite closely. On top of that, I'd be looking at other high frequency indicators. The number of listings coming into the marketplace is falling very quickly. So looking for signs of vendor confidence improving would show up in a stabilization and then a rise in new stock coming onto the marketplace. We can see that agency activity as well across the CoreLogic platforms. So across our RP data service, which has about 70% of real estate agents subscribing to it, tracking the number of reports that are done across that platform is also really important. Those CMA or comparative market analysis reports tend to lead new listings by about 2 weeks. We have seen about a 60% reduction in the number of CMAs being done across RP data, looking at the rolling 7-day count of CMA reports. So clearly that's indicating we should expect a fairly severe drop in new listings activity across the market. Then there's also other high frequency factors like the number of valuations that are going across our platforms. That's actually holding up pretty firm at the moment. We are seeing valuations still rolling through, only about a 4% reduction. But interestingly enough, we are seeing a real change in the types of valuations that are being conducted. Normally, you'd see short form and long form vals, which are, they involve a site inspection, going inside and measuring up and so forth. They're the predominant proportion of valuations that are normally undertaken. But we have seen a fairly sharp reduction in those on-site inspections, with more valuers moving to curbsides, to desktop valuations, and so forth. But I'd be watching also for a change in those valuation events, as well as a real-time indicator of any market changes.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, just throwing it out there to the audience too, that joining us today, and welcome again. We've got a Q&A button down the bottom of the webinar. So feel free to pop your questions through. We'll, if we've got time, we'll ask Tim a few questions. So Tim, people want a ray of hope. What are some positives that can be taken from these times? Things like low interest rates.
Well, that's probably one of them. Absolutely. We haven't seen interest rates this low pretty much ever. We've got a cash rate at 0.25%. We've got mortgage rates that are generally sub 3%, particularly for fixed rates. So we are expecting interest rates to remain as low as this, at least for the next 3 years. With the government or the RBA engaging in an elevated level of bond purchases, targeting a yield of 25 basis points, we can expect those 3-year bonds to remain at that very low interest rate for some time, pretty much guaranteeing that interest rates will remain low at least for the next 3 years, potentially longer than that. On top of that, you can also see that there probably is going to be some downwards pressure on prices. So that the silver lining there is simply that affordability will improve once again. And this is one of the factors we saw as we came out of the last downturn, where housing values fell by nearly 10% nationally, was that first home buyers became much more active in the market. I think first home buyers are probably the beneficiary here as we start to see the marketplace moving out of this disruption period. Once the economy starts to return to normal operations, we probably once again will see first home buyers taking advantage of these very low interest rates, as well as the fact that property values probably have slipped a little during the next however many months it takes to actually get this virus contained. Maybe another positive point as well, Paul, is simply that we are seeing the industry pivoting here. We are seeing the industry being forced to change, being forced to take on new technologies that make things more efficient, that are pushing people to adapt. I think that's, sure, change is always difficult, but we'll look back in a year's time, I'm sure, and just think, well, coming out of this COVID period, we have actually seen the industry and the process become more streamlined as we've enabled people to work remotely and digitally towards property settlements.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be a COVID-related baby boom in 9 months' time, Tim?
Yeah, that actually,
or a high divorce rate.
Everyone's cooped up in in their own confinement, I guess you need to find something to entertain yourself. So, yeah, that's probably another positive factor as well. We'll see the fertility rate starting to improve. Been on a bit of a downwards trajectory the last couple of years. So, yeah.
Well, it'll not out the real first home buyers, won't it? So, but it is good. And I guess you're right. Look, interest rates being as low as they are, I think I saw 2.16 being advertised the other day by a major bank, and which is amazing. So the lowest I'd seen recently was 2.63. So that's a huge drop, and the pressure seems to be on to pass that on to the consumer, which is fantastic.
Yep, no doubt. And lenders are still in the business of lending. You know, we should expect lenders may become a little bit more cautious in their lending policies, particularly around some of those industries that have been more hard affected by unemployment and by travel bans and closure of hospitality and so forth. But lenders are still there to lend, and I think the lending environment will remain extremely competitive. So for those borrowers out there who would be described as high quality borrowers, right? So people with low debt, with stable incomes, with jobs and so forth, are in a very good position to get very, very competitive interest rates and good terms on their loans. And lenders will be certainly out there in force trying to attract those borrowers.
So obviously the RBA had a special meeting 5 days ago and reduced rates down. They're saying the next one's flagged for April 7, so just short of the Easter period and when construction normally shuts down for 2 weeks. Which way do you think it'll go? Do you think it'll drop again, and we won't hold you to this? It's just purely thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think the RBA has any further to go, to be honest, Paul. I think they've been quite clear that their lower effective bound of the cash rate is 0.25%, which is where it's at the moment. So I think any additional announcements coming out of the Reserve Bank board meetings, which are held on the first Tuesday of every month, will probably be more around untraditional or different types of monetary policy. So we've already seen the RBA announcing their launch into quantitative easing. That's their bond buying strategy from the secondary market, targeting a yield of 25 basis points across the 3-year bond market. Also announcing their $90 billion funding facility for lenders to support small to medium enterprises. So I think any announcements coming out of the RBA will be along those lines, potentially even further ramping up their repo strategy of repurchasing. All in an effort to ensure that liquidity remains in the financial sector, that people can get cheap access to debt, but also with a real focus on keeping the Australian dollar low. We are seeing pretty much every Fed around the developed world is at rock bottom for their interest rates. They are launching QE programs designed to ensure liquidity in their markets. So ensuring that Australia remains competitive and the Aussie dollar remains very low, which makes our exports, of course, more attractive, is going to be also very important for the Reserve Bank.
Do you think other industries are going to bounce back? You know, travel is a main one at the moment. We're seeing the travel factor is just Qantas, Virgin, all the major travel companies shutting down. Do you think the travel companies will bounce back with this, or will have to change how they work to get back to normal? Which I know we've got a lot of brokers, a lot of account managers on here, etc. That travel. You travel all the time. I travel all the time. Be curious to see what happens at the end of this.
Yeah, I think absolutely the travel sector will bounce back, and the reason the travel sector has been so affected is simply due to policy that's banning or limiting the amount of travel people can undertake. We're not allowing people to come into the country, so international travel is obviously affected unless you're a resident, and state borders are closed. So as soon as we start to see those sort of policies being lifted, which of course is dependent on the virus being contained and the yields, the curve starting to flatten out and taking off some of that pressure from a healthcare system, that's where we'll probably start to see travel bouncing back. It's not going to happen instantly. I think there's still going to be a lot of cautiousness amongst potential travellers in moving out of their home isolation and getting back to the way it used to be. But that will be a gradual phenomenon. I think eventually we will see more people starting to get back on planes or trains or buses, whatever they choose to travel on. but it's not going to happen overnight, and it's highly dependent, of course, on policies being lifted and confidence returning as well. But maybe this is another one of the hangovers from COVID is that we do see more people permanently working from home. We do see more people taking advantage of digital and enablement strategies and reducing the amount of travel that's required interstate.
I'm going to go to some Q&A from our audience out there today. And Dennis Hall sent a question through. Out of the end of this Kung Fu coronavirus, he's called it, it's all taken us for 6, do you see online auctions used to a greater extent than traditional on-site auctions? Do you think this is going to have a major effect with people staying on those digital platforms?
It's a great question. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I think auctions work really well when there's competitive bidding, where there's emotion, where there's some hype around the auction as well. Auctioneers do a fantastic job of building that hype, of building that enthusiasm, and of course that builds across larger groups that are competitive in an auction process. I'm not too sure how that that enthusiasm or that level of spirit would translate into a digital format. I think most agents would still prefer to see auctions being held on site physically. But no doubt with these technologies now being utilized, more people will become comfortable using them. And maybe even for strategic bidders, they might find this a much better way to be involved in an auction process without having that emotion or the pressure to join a frenzied bidding environment. They actually work well for some people with a very firm bidding strategy. Additionally, I think we have seen a lot of real estate agents quite slow to adopt these sort of strategies pre-COVID, and now that we have seen more people getting onto the digital bandwagon, maybe they'll be offering this up as a staple alternative to both having on-site as well as more people accessing the auction remotely, which could really open up the number of bidders being registered for auctions going forward. So, to answer your question directly, I think it was Dennis, we're pretty much moving from hardly anybody utilizing these technologies to a larger proportion utilizing them going forward, and I think that will be a mainstay. Though I think it will still be the most popular option will be to be there in person.
We're seeing a lot of millennials, especially who sit as first home buyers now, are not wanting to physically deal with anybody. We see that in our own business. They don't want to go and speak to a conveyancer. They want to do everything online. They want to digitally sign, as a lot of brokers that are on here are now seeing, to the point where they're pulling down statements, everything else remotely. So I think very much this online auction side will be a moving forward a lot more.
Absolutely. And then you've also got the other element of, most properties in Australia are still sold via private treaty. Even in the major auction markets like Sydney and Melbourne, it's generally only a quarter of properties, sometimes a third, when the market's really hot, would be taken to auction. So we are now seeing, for obvious reasons, a lot more agents utilizing virtual inspections, digital technologies to take people through the home, to answer their questions, either just through FaceTime or through Zoom or anything like that, or dedicated apps that a lot of agencies or private sector app developers have launched into the marketplace. So yeah, I think going forward we'll see a fundamental change in people becoming much more comfortable in inspecting properties without physically being there. But I think still the vast majority would prefer to get out there and kick the walls and turn on the taps and flush the toilets and so forth.
Chatting to an agent, mate, only a couple of days ago, and said, "How'd you go on Saturday?" And he said, "Oh, we've already adapted the FaceTime." So they're FaceTiming clients and walking them through a house, and they're saying, "Can you turn the shower on for me? Can you open the for me? Can you do all this?" And and they're recording on the other end of the phone. So I guess everyone's adapting to what they have to do at the moment, and even we are with doing web exits. So with that, Tim, I'd like to thank you for your time this morning, and it's great to catch up as always. And thank you to all the participants that joined us this morning. And
it's been a pleasure, mate.
No worries. You stay safe. You stay healthy up there in Noosa. All us Melbourne real estate agents will be very disappointed we're not up there with you.
The state border will eventually reopen, I'm sure, and we certainly welcome our Melbourneite visitors up here. This time of the year, they're generally a big part of the population. So, but thanks very much, Paul and the team, for inviting me along to the webinar. It's been an enjoyable experience.
All right, Tim, thank you, and stay safe. And to everybody on the WebEx, thanks for joining us today, and keep an eye out for our next one, and look forward to talking soon. Everybody, please stay safe and isolate.